Let's hope no one's actually home as I'm doing this. Hi. The idea for this video came The idea for this came because I asked my friend a random question while talking about Call of Duty. Where do you think the first use of Nazi zombies came from? And from there, I've kept a very interesting tab on my phone. And because the urge to know why is kicking in for me, I had to find out the entire history for the concept of Nazi zombies. So I can confidently tell you that this video is sponsored by autism.
Set in my ways, I am changing every single move you're making.
So we know that Nazis were into some weird shit, like browsing r/butt sharpies. I swear to God, that's a thing. They also had a tendency to justify their beliefs by connecting them to mythology and occultism, comparing Jews to vampires, comparing German soldiers to werewolves, and deemed them the dogs of God, which is also a really fire name for the worst of fucking people. Fuck you for taking that name. They also wanted to connect the German people to Atlantis, hoping to find any link between the two, so they could present themselves as pure, it seems. Another weird thing, as well, we kind of know this stuff already, they search for mythological artifacts, the Holy Grail, Thor's hammer, Spear of Destiny, if anything. They believe very heavily in their Nordic mythology and their occultist beliefs, so going as far as to hire astrologists and witches to help them find any links or justifications really just set in motion just how much they actually believed in this shit. This obviously led to a lot of conspiracies, and I think the most popular one is their connections to UFOs. There's also this idea that the Nazis had one of the UFOs crash in US territory, which resulted in the Roswell incident. That's a whole different topic though, but isn't that really funny how I just tossed it in here for no reason? One thing that isn't a conspiracy are their human experiments. I'm not going to go over them because most of us already know what they are. So because of this, Nazis are believed to have dabbled in some weird fucking shit and giving their human experiments and their desires for their soldiers. The idea of Nazis creating some sort of super soldier or dark entity weapon really doesn't come from nothing. But this idea doesn't spread unless you spread it to a wider audience, right?
Since I've analyzed predictions far beyond the comprehension.
The first known appearance of Nazi zombies as a topic goes back to 1941, it seems, in media at least. However, at this point, zombies were tied to their original definition, that being someone who was brought back to life and is under the control of a sorcerer, right? Usually tied to magic rather than a virus or a mutation. Magic instead of science, basically. Look into how this monster shifted into what we know it as today in the next section. The movie King of the Zombies is about an American World War II transport aircraft that crash lands in the Caribbean on a remote island. Here, the movie takes place in Dr. Miklos Sangre's mansion, where it's found out that he's conducting a voodoo ritual. Sangre is actually a foreign spy, most likely a German spy, who's trying to get intel from a US admiral who also crash landed on the island. And then when Sangre is defeated, his zombies are broken free from the spell that got put on them. This film is only considered Nazi zombies because the movie has this implied German villain. The zombies themselves, without exaggeration, are all black guys. Bar one, no dead ass, only one of them was white. The sequel named Revenge of the Zombies is described as a partial remake to the original and actually does use Nazi soldiers as resurrected zombies. These two then mark the use of Nazis in media, using zombies as a sort of secret experiment.
I've been tortured with the writhing thoughts that stop a star from shining.
Okay, so we know what a zombie is. I don't need to over-explain that to you. I hate when channels over-explain the most mundane and simple things to you. Stop inflating your video. However, the fun part is that it seems like George Romero took the concept of a vampire and mixed it into a zombie. The idea of something returning from the grave to kill the living. Taking this part of a vampire and applying it to the resurrected entity of a zombie, well, it creates the hungry-ass fuckers we see today. Thanks, George. Throughout the 50s, Nazi zombies weren't really seen and didn't come back until 1966 with the movie Frozen Dead, in which a crazy scientist attempts to reanimate the corpses of frozen Nazis, unironically using a girl's head. This movie does predate George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which seems to have been the catalyst or the start for the modern zombie. But here, you can see the start of Nazi experiments creating zombies. Staying on theme, in 1977, the movie Shockwaves shows these zombies as being even more supernatural. Right? Now you may be asking, how the fuck do you get more supernatural with a zombie? You give them fucking powers. In this movie, they're almost indestructible. They don't need food, sleep, oxygen, can't be killed by drowning, and can die of old age. And on top of this, they have the ability to camouflage. What they don't have the ability to do is look into the sun, like a fucking vampire. I also made a vampire video that you should watch after this. In 1981, the movie Zombie Lake created another type of Nazi zombie. Again, just like vampires, these guys fed on human blood, although these guys are able to walk around in the sun. This movie in particular focuses on a zombie father and his young daughter in a French village that was occupied by Germany. The zombies were awoken at their resting place in 1955 and proceed to not only be Nazis or not only be flesh-eating monsters, but worst of all, they're misogynist by attacking women, and only the women. You see, ladies, unlike them, I was an inside out. I played the female activist emotion. However, this trope kept going a little bit silently, and then after this, it found its footing in video games.
Kill me now before I'm sober, so I die before it's over.
It seems that the first video game to use an actual Nazi zombie was actually Wolfenstein 3D, all the way in '92. They continued to appear, although loosely, in Return to the Castle Wolfenstein and in The Old Blood. From here, they made a few appearances in other games, most shockingly Uncharted. There was only one, but it was still there. These zombie army games did a really good job of keeping the trope going into the early 2010s, even mid-2010s. In case you don't know, the zombie army games focus on the last effort plan of Hitler unleashing his very greatly named Plan Z, which is to resurrect all of their fallen soldiers as zombies. Right, initiate Plan Z so you don't lose the fucking war. Occult generals summon zombies and Hitler searches for occult relics that were supposed to protect him from the zombies. And your job, stop them. Taking a step back to just zombie genre itself, there seems to be two different boom periods. In 1996, when Resident Evil first came out, it's credited as reviving zombies back to popularity, along with a slightly forgotten video game named House of the Dead, in which, if you grew up during the late 90s and early to mid 2000s like me, you may have came across the arcade machine, and if you were also like me, it would scare the fuck out of you every time you saw it. The second boom period is the most important part of the zombie and Nazi zombie theme overall.
Set in my stone, I am changing every other move you're making.
Following Resident Evil came the 2000s zombie boom period that I believe lasted up until 2012. 28 Days Later seems to have kickstarted the boom all the way back in 2002 and was also followed by the Resident Evil movie that same year, as well as Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead remake both in 2004. On top of this, quarantine in 2008 was a really big thing at that period of time. And lastly, it seems like Zombieland was at its peak in 2009. The zombie boom period peak in 2009. If we start to jump a little forward, video games also started popularizing zombies, right? The continuous Resident Evil sequels, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 in 2008 and 9, Dead Rising 2 in 2009. Hell, you can even throw in Plants vs. Zombies also in 2009. Like I said prior, it seems like 2009 was the peak of this zombie boom period. Right? Even going back to Nazi zombies in particular, Dead Snow in 2009 also played a part in keeping this trend going and getting more popular. Dead Snow being about Nazis who fled to the Norwegian mountains during the end of World War II and presumably died, eventually coming back as Nazi zombies, guarding gold that they stole. This boom continued up until, like I said, 2012 it seems, but there's one very, very big thing I haven't mentioned yet. In fact, I've avoided it just to make it a big point in this entire thing. Can you guess what it is? Well, you don't really have to, I'm gonna tell you right now.
Faith is stronger when I'm sober. I'll survive until it's over.
In a really nice wraparound segment, I can confidently say, when it comes to the Nazi zombies theme in particular, nothing, and I mean nothing, did more for this trope than Call of Duty, fucking unironically. Alright, if you're a guy, you know what I'm talking about, right? But I have like a 24% female viewers, and so let me explain it to them. Like I said prior, the zombies boom seemed to have peaked in 2009, riding off the wave of the movies and the games during this decade. In 2008, Call of Duty World at War came out and introduced Nazi zombies to the franchise as a side game mode. 2 years later, at the tail end of this boom period, came Call of Duty Black Ops. And with this, I mean this with like all the confidence in my body, in the world. Black Ops 1 is the reason why the theme of Nazi zombies was as relevant and became ingrained as a common thing in horror. This thing was unironically so fucking huge. Like, the story was so simple. It took parts of what we already talked about and mixed them together with their own narrative. In the simplified version, Nazis were doing freaky ass experiments, they tried to revive the dead, and oh fucking whoops, a zombie. Playable character Edward Richtofen said, "You know what? I kinda don't like this guy I'm working with. You know what else? Fuck him. And you know what else? Fuck his daughter and her stupid ass dog." And that's how we got hellhounds in the game and the little girl who controlled the zombies that we were shooting. Oh, this shit used to be fucking incredible. Unfortunately, however, despite being the biggest reason for Nazi zombies finding a footing in horror, Call of Duty very quickly seemed to have dropped the Nazi Zombies title and regarded the game mode as just Call of Duty Zombies. When it comes to video games, and honestly media as a whole, Black Ops was really the last big thing for Nazi zombies as a whole. Very soon after this, though, the zombie fatigue started to settle in very clearly.
For all the wonder in believing that it's making me weak, I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete.
Right, the Walking Dead TV show in 2010 and The Last of Us and World War Z in 2013 seemed to be the last big things for zombie media as a whole. And soon after that, zombies in pop culture declined fucking hard. Even in video games, while Zombie Army did a good job of keeping fans of this trope engaged, it never really reached the popularity of all the other games that I did mention. Hell, I had never even heard of Zombie Army until like 2022. Even Call of Duty declined in popularity. There are so many more people that will tell you that, oh yeah, I used to play Nazi Zombies, than actively still playing it. I know a lot of people in my generation actively love Black Ops 3 Zombies and say that it was the pinnacle of that, and maybe as a whole for the trope of Nazi zombies, but the hard pill for them to swallow is that Black Ops 3 pushed away a lot more people than it actually brought in, and that can be jotted down to many other factors, because at this point in time, this idea, this concept was just worn out. It was getting tired. It was getting overused. Even going back to film and TV, zombie movies just aren't popular anymore. I'll go as far as to say that in the 2020s, they're worn out. They're actively the old lady stripper at the party. Nobody wants it, but it's there. I mean it when I say that this was sponsored by autism. I hyperfixated for like 2 days, and I stopped. And I forced myself to finish this. Yeah, that's it. Boom. I had to get the door. I don't know if you could hear the doorbell going off. Yeah, that's why I had a beanie on. I'm having a bad hair day. It's mainly this thing. What was I saying? Nazi zombies. Yeah, that's a trope that just kept going and going. Well, just zombies as a whole. It kept going and going and going, and then now everyone's tired of it. Should I just end the video like this? Bro, I'm gonna be completely honest. I didn't make an outro either. Again. And I don't know what to say. I completely forgot what I was talking about. Bye.
Walks on water, semi-blinding, faith is strong.